Hey everyone, and welcome to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 4, Episode 16. It's called Galaxy's Child. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. This episode features two plots that, ultimately merge into one, but we have Leah Brahms, the fantasy engineer woman that Geordi kind of fell in love with in the holodeck when he had the computer recreate her. And then also, of course, we have this alien life form, which is a space, vacuum living life form, which ultimately the Enterprise encounters and maybe accidentally kills, and then is sort of burdened with the task of making sure its new child, because the creature is pregnant.
Which they have to perform a C-section on.
Which they do, yes, with giant phaser beams from the ship. And then escort. So that's the two plots, right? So they're kind of responsible for this alien life form. It doesn't even have a name because it's new. They don't have a name for it. There's even a funny little joke where, because they're calling the child of this, like a couple of them refer to it as Junior, and Data sort of says, "Oh, is that the name of the species now? Are we calling it Junior?" And it's like, "No, Data, no, that's not."
Not what that means.
Yes. So that's just the episode. What did you make of this one?
I thought the Geordi plot was quite enjoyable, surprisingly. It's the sort of thing where, especially on this show, we've seen these kind of faux romantic plots be kind of dreadful, let's be honest, a lot of the time. This one was quite enjoyable, I suspect because the two actors have quite a bit of chemistry. So it works.
Yeah, I'm conflicted on this one. I like the overall point of it. I like the message that it's kind of getting across, which is ultimately that Geordi has this fantasy. It's this woman that he kind of had this imaginary version, which, yes, was aided with like the history of the real person, but it was this, I
think it's another example of Trek kind of being ahead of its time in many ways, in that this feels very much the reality of the internet right now, I guess, where you have all this information just available on pretty much anyone. Yeah, you could correlate this as a celebrity, or even someone who is just kind of on YouTube, where someone feels like they know the person because they've watched them in enough videos or something like that, and then, or maybe they read their posts on social media and they think, oh, I like this person, I would consider this person a friend because I feel like I know them from this kind of thing. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in present day you could kind of transport this across to, and it works quite well. And maybe this is a sign that it was effective, but I felt oddly like uneasy throughout a lot of this plot. It's a little bit uncomfortable because Geordi's kind of pushing quite a bit early on, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you can tell pretty quickly she's not really into it. She's not feeling the same way, and it feels creepy, stalkerish, a little bit uncomfortable. And I think that is kind of the point.
It kind of is. I didn't necessarily enjoy the experience all that much. It was kind of this like anxiety that was just kind of getting in the way of me enjoying the I don't know, because ultimately, because we find out she's married, of course. Like, she reveals that, like halfway or so through the episode, and when she realizes that Geordi's kind of trying to put the moves on, she's like, wait a minute, hold on.
You know all this stuff, but you don't know I'm married?
Yeah. And ultimately, it's kind of, don't get me wrong, there's some of it's funny. Early on, like, Geordi finds out she's coming. He's even a little bit inappropriate when Picard mentions that she's coming aboard. It kind of like, oh, this is great news. Like, oh, I'm excited. And Picard's like, why? And he tries to, calm himself down a little bit and say it in a professional manner, but he still comes across a little bit like a teenager who's excited that he's getting to meet his crush.
There's a bit, yeah.
But there's a couple of funny beats. He's talking to Guinan, and Guinan's like sniffing this out immediately. Like, there's something not right about all this. He's too excited about this woman. And Geordi, as he's leaving, look, I'm not expecting anything romantic necessarily, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be good friends. And as soon as he said that, I'm like, she's going to hate him. And the first thing she says when she realizes who Geordi is, and when I say who Geordi is, I just mean the engineer aboard the Enterprise. She doesn't know him personally yet.
Just by reputation.
Yeah. The first thing she says, oh, you've been the one messing up all my engineering designs. And so it starts off in that funny beat, and you can kind of see the funny beat coming because it's well set up in that sense. But once we go past that, and we have Geordi kind of trying to be nice and then inviting her, like, to dinner, which he presents as, okay, like, we're not getting along very well, let's try and like plan out what we're going to do over the next couple of days of this visit, the things we want to address in the engine, and the all the modifications that I've made, because I like that part of it. I like the idea that we have literally seen plots every few episodes, it feels like, since the start of the show, where they're in a situation where Geordi has to think up some makeshift solution to like either tinker with the engine or tinker with the warp core or tinker with something on the ship to make the Enterprise do something or survive something it's not really supposed to or was ever thought of.
Standard Star Trek fare at this point.
And I kind of love the idea of the engineer who designed all of this coming on board and saying, what have you done to my baby? And not understanding why there's all these like extra things been added and tinkered with, and like that's kind of funny.
It's Frankenstein, her child, essentially.
Yeah. But she kind of, obviously, over the course of the episode, it starts to become more impressed with some of the modifications.
Yeah.
I will say, I don't know if it ever quite... Because, again, I was anxious throughout when he was trying to like ask her to dinner. See the whole scene where he's in his quarters and he's like trying to find the right lighting and the right music, and I'm like, oh, Geordi.
Do you know why I think I was okay? Because I understand why this is uncomfortable and awkward to watch, right?
Yeah.
I think I've seen just so much British TV with the cringe just factor that is baked in inherently in that. Like, it's such a big part of especially British comedies, where it's uncomfortable to watch, and it's like, oh, you it's funny, but you just, it's like a train wreck. You don't want to look away. There's so many British comedies like that, and I think it's desensitized me a little bit, so that I'm okay with this
maybe.
now.
Because it gets to the point where she wants to see the schematics and things, and she ends up finding the hologram program. She gets like an ensign to help her find something. It's like, I'll go. Oh, there's a program here that the whole point of which is to look at the original design, and of course we remember this from last season, right? And or 2 seasons ago, whatever it was, and she goes to the holodeck, and you're like, oh no, and you fill with dread. And Geordi comes running in trying to like catch her before it's too late, and she's already like looking at herself, and the hologram version is saying something really cheesy and almost kind of dirty, like, every time you touch the engine, you're touching me. Something to that effect.
Yeah, and I remember that being awkward and cringy in the original episode as well.
And I think there's a couple of ways to look at this. And on the one hand, this is a private holodeck thing. You could equate this holodeck program kind of the same way we talked about with Barclay. The idea that, okay, it's a bit weird that he's actually using the program to do this, but it's kind of an extension of just one's fantasy. It's kind of private. It's, no one is ever judged or even has discovered what they think about in their minds. If you have like a really embarrassing little fantasy in your head that's not even a real fantasy, it's just something you think about for 10 minutes and go, oh yeah, that's silly, and move on. No one ever knows. It doesn't matter. But there's a record of it here, right? And this idea that she is invaded upon something that is essentially supposed to be just for him, regardless of how weird it might come across. Like, like how many people in the world would look at you differently if you'd known what you'd fantasized about? Like, I think for everyone, that's going to be
there's almost a point there where everyone knows everyone's thoughts, so it kind of all just cancels out and everyone goes, whatever.
Yeah, in a weird way. So I think that's the defense for Geordi here to an extent, is that, especially since it's not like the program was started with a nefarious, kinky purpose in mind.
And I think you can kind of defend Geordi throughout. Don't get me wrong, she's clearly not that receptive to his advances, but he's not being like aggressive. He's not being out of line. He obviously he has no idea that she's married, so he doesn't even realize he's hitting on a married woman or anything like that. And once she does turn that, he does back off.
Did he not have rings in Star Trek? Like, is she not wearing a ring that you could have noticed? It's just conveniently never mentioned or brought up.
No, that's a fair point. I didn't see a ring on her hand, admittedly.
I mean, because let's face it, the whole point of a wedding ring largely is just so that everyone else knows from that point on that it's a married person. That's one of the main purposes of said ring.
It might not be a thing in Trek's future, because I mean, I don't know. We know there's basically no religion. We have
to go back and watch the Keiko wedding. See if Keiko's got a ring on.
Yeah, this is it. With there being a lot of like lack of religion, I'm wondering if a lot of the customs around things such as marriage are pretty heavily changed from what we know.
It's possible. It's something that occurred to me. Like, just conveniently, this was never even addressed, and unless it's something that's been established before that we've forgotten, but I don't think it is.
Yeah,
anyway,
I don't recall ever hearing of a wedding ring in Trek.
But anyway, alternatively though, I don't actually think the episode in Geordi actually does enough to convince her that this isn't weird and like skeevy, because he kind of just yells at her and says that, you know, he tried to extend a hand of friendship, she turned it down, but he doesn't actually explain enough of what, you know, how it turned into this. Like, I feel like if I were Geordi, I'd be like, look, it started off as this, the computer gave me a hologram of you because you're the one who understood the engine, and it just kind of like, it was a time of stress, and I think the hologram or the computer was trying to like relax me through your hologram, and it kind of, and I admit, it got a bit weird, and I kind of got attached. It's odd, I admit it, but
yeah,
you know,
no,
that's the extent.
This is a perfectly fair complaint, and I don't disagree. I mean, if I were to attempt to defend it at this point, I would suggest maybe kind of what we were talking about a minute ago with, you know, you don't really judge on the holodeck fantasies really that much. Maybe just after a bit of time, she kind of cools down from the shock of it and comes around a little bit on her own merits.
I mean, it's one of these things where, you know, he says that it never went any further than like this dialogue, and you know, it's as far as we saw, it never did, right? But like, there's the possibility that it did go somewhere, like, and she doesn't know that it didn't. She doesn't know him that well to just take him at his word necessarily. So at the end of the episode, when they're smiling, saying, "Oh, I'm happy I got to know you," and you know, sorry I was being a, you know, curmudgeon-y, you know it all, and he's apologizing, and you know, they both had these expectations of each other, and they're apologizing for expecting things, and yada yada yada. I mean, all the messaging there's fine to wrap up the episode. Everything they're saying there makes sense to end the story with those sentiments. It's just a bit weird to me that I don't feel like she ever actually got the full story of what this was. Even if it didn't actually have to come from him necessarily, she could have just asked to like replay more of it and see how it ended, or something like that.
It's possible. I mean, for all we know, she does that off screen in the sense that because when Geordi leaves the room, she stays in there with the program still paused but on, from what I recall. Yeah, it just sort of ends with a moment of her looking like she's like reconsidering the anger she's just like unleashed on him. Yeah, so maybe we don't see it, but maybe she does play more of it and go, okay, no, this kind of is it, and then in the crisis and respecting the professional vision that he clearly has. I mean, I'll give it this. I do at least appreciate that her implication when she's mad at him here is very much like sexual. Like, it never outsays it too much, but the way she kind of accuses him of using this hologram for his sick fantasy, it's definitely implying that it's like, you know, kinky interactive porn. And I know that, okay, we kind of implied that again with Barclay, but again, that was played more for laughs. You know, it was really funny having like Troy see like herself and stuff. Like it was played for comedy. This was played a bit more straight in her reaction to this of like how sort of sick and sort of. I think she actually used the word violate. She feels violated by this existing. And that's where, you know, if I think about it a little bit more, I start to think about, well, you know, at what point is this just an extension of a fantasy that's in someone's head, and at that point, you know, is this any different than someone keeping a diary and saying what they're thinking a lot of, and then someone reads it later on? Is it really on them that you read their diary? It's not like he's sharing this with the world. Yeah. You know, he and there's nothing wrong with someone having as many, you know, sexual, depraved, sick, nasty fantasies as they want. It's kind of a thing, and no one never is judged for it. Well, it depends how sick they are, I suppose, but you can't be judged for it if you don't tell anyone about them.
Yes, I suppose. Because essentially all he's really done here is developed a crush on someone, and you know, and Geordi, because he is a good person, is quite harmless. There's never any, you know, but it is very cringeworthy because
it is.
So it, yeah, I don't know. The whole thing is very cringy to me at various points, and that's not necessarily a problem because I do think that it should be cringy, and it's kind of by design. I just don't know if I loved the plot even being tackled.
That's fair. There are a lot of people who just don't enjoy watching cringy things. Like it is like not that nice to watch, right?
There's types of cringe that I can enjoy. There absolutely is, but you know, I could take the Office cringe any day of the week. Yeah,
that's not too bad on the cringe scale. Although I have spoken to this is the UK Office. I'm assuming you're referring to here.
I mean, both. Either one. They both have elements of cringe.
Fair. I find the UK one is much heavier on the cringe, and I have spoken to some Americans in the past who just can't get past it, even in that. I get it.
Yeah, it's weird because I do think there's good elements here, and I like the overall sentiment that it's making, and it does end on the right point. I almost wanted guiding because the episode ends with them. They're in 10 forward. She gets another private communication. She had one of those at the start of the episode, and we didn't hear who it was, but it was kind of obvious when we later found out she was married. And then this time she actually says, "Yeah, it's my husband," and she walks off and leaves Geordie sitting there on his own. And the episode just ends there. The credits, start playing. But I kind of wanted Guiney to come up and go, and just like
yeah, nothing romantic, eh?
Well, that was the thing, yeah, because on when he said, "I'm not expecting anything romantic," jump forward 10 minutes and he's in his fancy fuzzy sweater and he's got his dinner table laid out and he's like, "Oh no, it's a bit mood, computer. No, raise the lights a little bit, just a little bit, there it is, yeah, a little bit of jazz. No, not jazz, that's not right."
Of course, he's like, maybe some Brahms. And I'm glad he acknowledged that would be cheesy and terrible.
Yeah, I can't just say here though, he was looking forward to her, and would you believe it, Brahms was disappointing. Who could have ever predicted that Brahms could be disappointing?
Do you know what? I have sworn to never watch The Boy because I don't want to shatter the illusion, the fantasy that maybe Brahms is amazing. maybe Tim is right, and for all I know, it's possible. Like right now, it's Schrodinger's boy. I will never know.
Yeah, well, there we go. That's that plot. They have to work together, of course, to solve a crisis that's happening, but that's more to do with the other plot. They just happen. Obviously, they'll just solving it.
Is a lot more straightforward, and it's fine, but it's like barely any of the runtime in comparison.
Yeah, there is like one beat of it that's really good, and the beat of it is that they find this life form floating in space, and they're all just keeping their distance, whatever. But then it starts to like radiates them. It's got like this beam kind of thing, and it's like, okay, we have to defend ourselves. So just as light as possible, just give it a light blast, right? Lowest settings possible on the phaser or whatever. And unfortunately, like the life readings go away after they do this, right? And the thing's been killed. And I think in the moment, because there's this intense close up in Picard's face, where the gravity that they've just killed, they've just discovered this new species that no human has ever discovered before. Perhaps no one in the Federation has ever discovered before. And they've just killed it. And I think Picard's pain of that, I like that couple of minutes when he thinks he's killed this thing. And it turns out he has. If anything, when he finds out it was pregnant and there's a baby, alien thing inside it, it's even like harsher.
I think there's a little bit of relief in that. Okay, he didn't at least commit genocide, which was a possibility for all he knew.
This was the last of its kind. And
yeah. I imagine those were the thoughts going through his head at that moment.
Yeah, but
I do think that moment is fantastic, and that horror that he does, and I think that's this plot kind of peaks here, which is a shame because it's like the start of the plot.
Yeah, and his performance there is really good. Otherwise, it's just the baby attaches itself to the ship after they perform a C-section, as previously mentioned, and they figure out where the original alien was going. It's this asteroid belt. Turns out there's other life forms just like this there, and they just have to do some engineering fanciness to get it away from the ship, because it's kind of like stuck to the back of the ship for most of the episode.
Feeding on it, sucking the energy.
And Geordie and Brahms are able to dispel it with science.
Yeah.
I mean, how much more attention did you want me to pay for that?
Just a side thing, I did notice there was an actual Star Wars reference in this.
What?
Well, her name is Leah Brahms, right? And there's a point where someone, one or two people, about halfway through the episode, switch and call her Leia. And that's a thing that happens in I think it is the first Star Wars film, where some people call her Leia and some people call her Leia. There's like a weird, people weren't told how to pronounce the name properly on set, I guess. So it kind of switches back and forth. And I thought, okay, that being done intentionally here was a nice little nod.
I never noticed it in Star Wars, and I didn't notice it in this episode, so...
You'll notice it if you ever happen to watch Star Wars again, which I'm sure you will. You're going to have to do it for a review at some point. You know it.
That's true. I'd have a sci-fi movie podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
That eventually, I'm going to have to review Star Wars on, and I'm not looking forward to it. Yeah, I mean that's basically the episode. It's not bad. There's some nice qualities to it. I found it a tough watch in places though, and I don't know if I think like you say the actors have decent chemistry. The points that it's making, I do think it kind of glosses over a couple of the key like revelations that feel like the characters could have needed a bit more of like unpacking that, but ultimately I don't know if the actual message and the payoff ever quite completely justifies the cringiness of sitting through a lot of it was.
I'm in for the cringe. I was there for it. That was some of the most enjoyable part of the episode for me, just watching him crash and burn and just be so terrible at this.
Well, that was Galaxy's Child. Next episode is called Night Terrors, and this is the description on IMDb. The Enterprise gets trapped in a Tychon's Rift, an energy-absorbing rupture in space, where all but Data, Troy, and Guinan experience rising hallucinations and paranoia. What an unlikely trio running around the ship.
Yeah, I'm trying to think why. I mean, Data, sure.
It'll be a species thing, because Troy and Guinan are both different.
No, they are, but it's not like it's only affecting humans either, is it? So I was wondering if there's something specific that linked them.
I imagine something to do with the empath abilities of Troy, maybe circumvents it, and then Guinan's this, ancient race is really wise, so I guess.
Sci-fi mystic mumbo jumbo.
I mean, her race deals with the Q, collective and all that bollocks, so.
That's true, yeah.
It's not collective, was it? The Q?
Continuum?
That sounds right. Oh god, it's been a while since Q's popped up. I can't remember. Sure it won't be long. I'm sure it won't be long. But that's Night Terror, so that's what's coming next time. You can let us know what you thought of Galaxy's Child in the comments. You can like and subscribe. Liking is super important. It is the free way to support us and helps us find new audience members and all that jazz. You can also support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month. And $1 per month is more than we would make if, it was more than we would make if you watched every single ad on every single video we put out in a month. We'd make more from the dollar on Patreon than we would off all the ad money. So, $1's a lot, is what I'm saying. This is, if you think that's too little and not worth the effort, no, it is. $1's amazing. So, you get some bonuses and there's higher tiers and all the rest of it. So go and have a look. Otherwise, catch us on Twitter at @mild_fuzz for channel updates. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek, and somewhere out there, Wesley Crusher is in complete control.